The apartment layout was horrible, but Max was okay with that. There was a narrow hallway with several doors on the left side and a large mirror at the end of the room. The door in the middle leads to the full bathroom, so pokey that you literally have to squeeze between a toilet, washing machine, and a huge ugly sink. Moreover, you can easily get hit in the face by the door if somebody is coming out of the bathroom, but the rent was acceptable, especially for 2 people. So Max had no complaints and no desire to move out. Max's previous room fellow, an ordinary kid whose name I can't remember, dropped out of the university at the end of his first year and returned to his hometown. Unfortunately, Lisa became his next cohabitant. Lisa was definitely out of this world. Seeing her in the morning crush in the subway, it's like a high calling. It wasn't even about the beauty. Lisa seemed to be shiny with a warm light that pulls you even against your will when you have that positive vibes for her. Her voice was so soft and sweet as a cup of warm milk with honey. We saw each other once or twice before that day. Even so, I knew that Lisa was so pure. She came here from some outback village to enter the university. She was so happy to find a roommate so quickly. Max hasn't even tried to hit on a single girl or even make friends with her, because Max is, how to put it nicely, Max is a jerk. He's the one who can jump out of the bushes with clown makeup and a plastic chainsaw to scare the hell out of you. And he'll be overjoyed about the prank. One of them has even cost him a pair of broken ribs, but nothing could ever stop him. "She's weird," Max said, spinning the rubber mask on his finger. It was a moss green creature mask. It looked rather disgusting and realistic, so it was easy to mistake a masked idiot with a rabid ghoul. "What do you mean?" I asked, trying to sit on the edge of the bathroom and wondering why I couldn't wait in their room or in the kitchen. It was too cramped for 2 people, and I didn't want to become Max's accomplice in some way. "Do you have ammonia?" "What's that for?" "In case you'll pass out, like your previous neighbor," I said, shrugging. "She's weird," Max repeated. "Every time she comes home, she stares at the mirror for 20 minutes, and she isn't even putting on some makeup, just standing there and watching. Recently, I've heard the door slam. I went out to say hello, but no one is there. Then I went to the kitchen for tea, and when I came back, she was already standing in front of the mirror. I almost dropped my mug." "Maybe she went to the bathroom?" I finally sat on the washing machine, which was quite comfortable except for the clothes were hanging in front of my face. "Did you leave a piece of meat in the sink again? Something stinks in here." Max got a whiff. "I didn't forget anything. Open your eyes. There's a toilet right in front of your nose. There's something wrong with the sewer system. The stink of it is everywhere." "Very nice." I get this barfy ball of phlegm in my throat. It was stuffy, and it didn't smell like sewage, but I didn't want to argue. I wanted to tell Max to go to hell, pick up my notes, and get out of here as soon as possible. "So, what about the ammonia?" "Quiet," Max said. He put on the mask, waited a minute, and then ran out into the hallway with a wild yell. I thought it was a bad idea both to come here today and to be friends with such a moron. I found myself thinking that it was the wrong time and the wrong place. That strange feeling was growing inside me and trying to break out of my chest. Perhaps, at that very moment, I finally guessed what exactly could stink like that. This guess hasn't formed a clear picture, but definitely settled disgusting fear inside of me. I wanted to grab Max's t-shirt and pull him back into the bathroom and sit there for another 2 hours or even until morning. But no such luck. Max screamed out. I didn't even know he could make such sounds. He dragged off his mask and began to back away. "What's wrong? What is going on?" I asked, jumping off the washing machine. Couldn't see anything behind Max, so I had to stand on my tiptoes to look over his shoulder. The fear inside of me grew stronger. It felt like ringing in my ears. Perhaps I was scared for Lisa. If she really passed out, hit her head on the nightstand corner, and now she's bleeding out, it would be definitely better than what I really saw. Lisa, as Max had said, was standing in front of the mirror, and she turned around her head. Only, damn head, like a girl from the film Exorcist. There were no positive vibes from her now, only a threat, thick and sticky, clinging to the skin and paralyzing like a poison.
What the hell is that?
Max whispered. It sounded very pathetic.
Lisa?
Lisa bent her head to the side and growled. The warm smile faded, leaving behind crooked fangs sticking out and the smell of her rotten breath. I could smell it even standing behind Max. And then Lisa, it, fell to all fours, the knee joints cracking loudly, the palms of its hands slapping the floor. For some reason, I recalled the moment when my older sister Mary used to play with dolls and left them lying around in unusual poses with arms and legs bent in all directions, and I stepped on them at night on the way to the toilet. I felt terribly uncomfortable and unpleasant, as if the dolls reproachfully looked at me with their painted eyes and pulled their crooked plastic hands towards me. Lisa was bending on the floor, glaring at us with an angry, hostile gaze that only wanted to tear us to pieces. I couldn't move a finger. Lisa growled and moved towards us, her thin, manicured fingers sliding across the linoleum, creaking and bending like the legs of huge spiders.
What the hell are you doing?
Max finally shouted, tugging on my arm. He kicked the door, and it knocked her down. It looked like a stupid scene from a movie, silly and odd, but it was real. Lisa was real. She snarled and tried to get up. The saliva was trickling down her chin, dripping onto the floor in her twisted palms. I came to my senses after we were in the room, Lisa's room, which was filled with all sorts of things, as if every tenant had moved out without taking anything with them. Here and there were strange furniture. Odd pictures and magazine posters were hanging on the faded walls. The shelves were piled high with books, boxes. Some of them looked new, and some of them were covered with a thick layer of dust. The door was closed with a weak latch that couldn't withstand a simple draft.
Max, let go of my hand,
I finally said, hearing a low growl and a scratching sound like a cat scratching.
Max, let go of my hand.
Max was still clinging to my wrist, squeezing it painfully. Max unclutched his fingers.
The dresser.
He nodded to a large dresser against the wall.
Help me move it.
We could barely budge him on the floor, and it left scratches from the cast iron legs. Lisa, actually, this creature began to bang at the door and the latch twitched. Honestly, I doubted that dresser, even that huge, would save us. That horrible creature was banging at the door and howling hollowly repeatedly, each time with new power. Between the punches, I was forgetting about the monster lurking behind the door. Or I didn't want to believe in it. So did Max. Max was as pale as a ghost and looked as if he was about to go mad. He stared at the dresser and at the little jingling figurines on it. One of them fell down and shattered into fragments after 3 or 4 punches.
What the hell is that?
Max finally cried. I didn't know what to answer. I hoped it wasn't true. I hoped that Lisa would suddenly ask us with a human voice why we were acting so strangely. But Lisa just scratched the floor with her nails and howled. I have no idea, I said, sitting on the nearest chair. My legs were jelly, and I felt again that almost forgotten and childish fear, when in the evenings I thought that dreadful monsters or my sister's creepy dolls would jump up from under the bed. I was pulling the blanket over my head, so it even became impossible to breathe, and was trying to fall asleep as soon as possible. Now, I wanted the same thing. I wanted to fall asleep and wake up in some safe place. But there was something else that bothered me more than the fear of the strange creature in the hallway. That smell. The same smell of rotten meat that I smelled in the bathroom and mistook it for Max's failed cooking skills. In Lisa's room, the smell clogged my nose and made it impossible to breathe.
Can you smell it?
Yeah, Max pointed to a door in the corner.
That's where it comes from.
What's there?
Storeroom. Sort of. Maybe there are a couple of Lisa's friends sitting there.
My courage abandoned me for a moment, but I forced myself to get up and open the door to the storeroom.
Oh crap!
Max screamed.
Is this ground?
He pushed me aside, went inside, and knelt down, running his hands over the floor with confusion.
This ground? It definitely wasn't here. There was a mountain of boxes, not a damn cave.
I didn't enter it. This cave, like a huge cellar, it looks like a portal to the parallel worlds. One can step into it and never come back.
Max, come back!
I could hear my own voice sounding plaintive and pleading, but it wasn't in my control. Perhaps my mind was ready to blow up. There, right behind you. I couldn't say it out loud, but Max already got up, turned around, and saw a pile of meat. It was a half-rotted, white worm-infested mass of something dark and hideous. I could clearly see the human palm, so it definitely was rotten human flesh. After a couple of minutes, Max slammed the door and started pacing back and forth across the room. It was annoying, but not enough to make me forget about the dreadful fear. It hadn't been more than 15 minutes since we moved the chest of drawers to that door, but Lisa was still there. I thought it would take her another 15 minutes to break into the room, and then we're finished, Max said quietly.
You're talking out loud,
He added. Then he said,
That's crazy. I just can't believe it. A crooked wench is running amok in the hallway. A meat market cave is in a storeroom, and we may be enjoying the last minutes of our lives. And you know what is the worst thing in this situation?
What? His tirade made me feel better. My thoughts became clear, and I clearly realized that we were a close call. We were trapped by an evil creature that stores up chunks of human flesh. I felt better, but not calmer. The fear still pressing on the back of my neck, as if a cold and slimy fog had settled on my neck.
I want to take a leak,
Max cried and kicked the dresser. It made me laugh, and I laughed, a little nervously and uncertainly. What about the window? I said at last.
Or you can try to go to the bathroom. The window,
Max repeated, his eyes lit up as if he had found the solution to all our problems. But we had actually one problem, the one that was suspiciously quiet in the hallway, waiting for something. It's the 8th floor, I said. Lisa really calmed down. Maybe she was listening too, or she was just tired. It seemed to me that it had been at least 24 hours since Max's stupid joke had turned into something terrible, hopeless. But the bright yellow wall clock showed that it had actually been barely 20 minutes.
Yes, but we can...
Max shut up, scratching the back of his head.
Maybe there's somebody we can call for help?
Uselessly.
Once someone shows up here, she'll be back to normal.
And will look like... I shut up as a high-pitched whistle came through the door and bit into my eardrums as a bee sting. This whistle reminded me of a story I read a long time ago about an evil monster that lured its victims with a similar whistle. But I can't remember anything else. At least, how this monster was defeated. Max suddenly leaped up and leaned against the dresser with madness in his eyes.
What the hell are you doing? Can you hear it?
But I couldn't hear anything, like the whole world has fallen silent. Neither Lisa howling nor street noise. Just nothing. Only after a few minutes of tense silence, I was able to distinguish some words as if they were coming through a dense layer of wool. Then they became a little louder. And that voice was so familiar. And that lullaby with a simple motive was so familiar. It was really Max's mother's voice. It was hers and wasn't hers at the same time. It was exactly the same soft intonation, which I heard 15 years ago. But it also had something sinister about it. Something ready to attack you. It's impossible, I said. The voice was peaceful and calming. It was hard to resist it.
Your mother is dead. But it is her.
Max looked lost. He was a little out of his mind.
It's still Lisa, remember? A crooked wench that wants to have us for dinner. Come on, Max.
I started to shake him, and he came to his senses a little bit. Lisa was apparently tired of waiting. She furiously knocked on the door. It resulted in a loud crack of breaking wood. We could see the hands flash through the gap, and soon Lisa broke into the room, overturning the dresser. Now she didn't even remotely look like the cute girl. She no longer looked like a human at all, more like a huge and hungry spider. Lisa slumped on the floor with the same disgusting sound that comes when a piece of meat falls off the table. Her insane eyes were darkened, and her skin took on the greenish hue of decaying flesh. Max grabbed the first thing that came to hand. It was a statue of a rearing horse. The horse was big and heavy-looking. Some time ago I saw it on the windows at the staircase. Probably one of the neighbors was too lazy to throw it in the garbage, and then it disappeared. And now it's here. I have no idea who brought it here. I closed my eyes a second before Max hit Lisa's twisted head with his statuette. I could hear bones crunching. The crunch, followed by a slurping sound. something squelching like snow melting under the soles of one's shoes. Lisa, wheezing, and as Max was finally throwing the horse away with a crash. I didn't want to open my eyes. I was afraid to see a terrible monster, still alive and ready to attack, but I was even more afraid not to see it, so I finally forced myself to do it. The disfigured Lisa was laying on the floor. The tips of her fingers were barely twitching, and there was a mess instead of her face. Nevertheless, it was Lisa. That divine Lisa. Not a disgusting monster. I wasn't surprised that at the storeroom again were only all sorts of junk. Boxes, and the slight smell of rotting meat.